Humanity was almost gone. The great civilizations that had once stretched across the stars were nothing but echoes in the darkness. The alien horror known only as the Endless had descended upon the galaxy, their ancient ships and incomprehensible powers obliterating every civilization they encountered. Planets were reduced to lifeless husks, and entire species were erased from existence. The vast network of interstellar empires crumbled under the weight of their invasion. No one had stood a chance. Except for humanity. The last remnants of the human race had been scattered, their numbers dwindling with every passing year. Yet, they had not given up. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity clung to survival with a tenacity that even the Endless had not anticipated. For centuries, they fought on, not with the advanced technologies of their enemies, but with an unyielding resolve. Their ships, now little more than scrap and scavenged parts, moved silently through the void, always on the run, always searching for refuge and resources, always evading the grasp of their merciless enemy. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The remaining human colonies were small, fractured, and hidden deep in the uncharted regions of the galaxy. Every planet, every moon, every station they held was a beacon of defiance in the darkness, a testament to the human will to survive. They had no grand fleets or massive armadas, only ragtag groups of fighters, scavengers, and scientists who worked tirelessly to create makeshift defenses. But every victory, no matter how small, was a triumph. Every battle fought against the Endless was a battle for humanity's future, for the memory of those who had already fallen. The war was one of attrition, a war of survival. The Endless, ancient and seemingly invincible, had no need for diplomacy or compromise. They were relentless, their technology vast and incomprehensible. No one knew exactly what they were or where they had come from, only that they destroyed everything in their path. Their ships were like shadows, gliding silently through the void, spreading death wherever they went. Entire star systems had fallen to their might, leaving nothing but ashes and silence. And yet, despite the odds, humanity had fought back. Not with strength, but with cunning. Their tactics were unconventional ambushes, traps, guerrilla warfare in the dark corners of space. They were outmatched in every way, but they had something the Endless could not fathom, the will to keep going, no matter the cost. When the Endless came, humanity did not run. They fought, with every ounce of their being. In the deepest, most remote corners of space, a group of human survivors had discovered something, a weakness in the Endless. It wasn't much, just a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability in their otherwise invincible forces. It was a thread, a sliver of hope that, if pulled on, could unravel the horrors that had destroyed so much. Now, it was all humanity had left. The remnants of humanity had gathered together scattered groups now unified by a single purpose. A single mission. They would strike back. They would find the Endless and face them in battle once more. With a weapon more powerful than any ship, any missile, any starship technology, they would attack not just the body, but the heart of the enemy. They would bring down the endless nightmare of destruction, even if it meant the last human would fall. But as the human fleets began to assemble in secret, the reality of the situation was clear. Even with this newfound knowledge, the odds of success were infinitesimally small. Every human ship that rose into the sky was a gamble. Every engagement, every act of defiance was a sacrifice. The colonies that had survived to this point were fragile, too small, too isolated. If humanity failed now, there would be no one left to carry on the fight. No one left to remember those who had fallen. There was no going back. No retreat. The last remnants of humanity had decided to make their stand. A small fleet of hastily patched together ships emerged from a hidden base in the dark, forgotten corners of the galaxy. Their mission was clear, to find and destroy the Endless at their source. To take the fight to the heart of the darkness and bring an end to the slaughter. The fleet was led by Captain Mara Duval, a veteran of countless battles, and the unspoken leader of humanity's last hope. She had seen the destruction firsthand, the devastation that the Endless had wrought. And she had lost everything. "I don't know if we'll make it," Captain Duval said quietly to her crew as the fleet prepared to launch. "But if we do, we end this. We end it for everyone who didn't survive, for everyone who's waiting for us to strike the final blow." Her words were met with silence. There was no grand speech, no rallying cry, just the quiet acceptance of the mission ahead. The crew knew what was at stake. They knew that they might not return. But they also knew they had no choice. If they didn't try, if they didn't take this chance, then the last of humanity would simply fade into nothingness, like all the others. The fleet moved into the depths of space, using every trick they knew to stay off the radar of the Endless. Their path was fraught with danger. Every corner of the galaxy was a potential ambush. And every time they passed a familiar star system, a wave of sorrow washed over them, knowing that it was likely already a graveyard, emptied of life by the relentless aliens. But they pressed on. There was no other choice. Weeks passed. Supplies dwindled. Morale fluctuated between hope and despair, but the humans held together. They had come this far, and they wouldn't turn back now. They had seen their homes and loved ones destroyed, entire worlds eradicated. The Endless had taken so much, but they hadn't taken everything. They hadn't taken humanity's will to fight. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of silence and uncertainty, the fleet emerged from the shadows of the galaxy's outer rim and found it, the core of the Endless, a massive, blackened structure floating like a malignant tumor in the emptiness of space. It was the heart of the alien horror, the source of its power. Captain Duval stood at the helm of the lead ship, gazing at the black monolith in front of them. "This is it," she said, her voice low. "We fight now. We do what we have to do. And when this is over, we remember who we are. We remember humanity." The order was given. The fleet surged forward, closing the distance. For the first time in years, humanity had a chance to strike back at the heart of the darkness. The battle that followed was one of the most brutal in human history, a clash between a fractured species and an ancient alien power that had never been tested by anything like humanity's desperation. As the last remnants of humanity faced their greatest test, one thing became undeniably clear: they might be the last of their kind, but they were not going down without a fight. They would carve their place in the universe not as victims, but as the last bastion of defiance. The Endless would not take this victory from them. Not now. Not ever. The future remained uncertain, but for the first time in centuries, humanity had hope again. The battle was chaos incarnate. As the fleet of battered human ships charged toward the heart of the Endless, Captain Mara Duval gripped the command console with white-knuckled intensity. The enemy's presence felt like a suffocating weight on her chest. Each passing second seemed to stretch into infinity, as though the very fabric of time was bending to the will of the alien horrors. The distant, massive structure loomed in front of them like a blackened monolith, a reminder of the death and destruction that had swept across the galaxy. The first volley of fire came from the human ships, a desperate barrage of lasers, missiles, and improvised weapons. The impact was immediate. But the Endless, those ancient, incomprehensible forces, did not react the way any other species would. The attack barely scratched the surface of the enormous structure. There was no dramatic explosion, no catastrophic response. Instead, there was a silent shift in the air, a quiet and terrifying hum that signified their awareness. The Endless were here, and they were waiting. "We knew they'd retaliate," Duval said, her voice steady despite the storm around her. "Brace yourselves." As if on cue, the ships of the Endless appeared, vast, dark shapes materializing from the shadows of the monolith, phasing in and out of existence like nightmares made flesh. Their movements were eerily fluid, as though they operated outside the conventional laws of space and time. Energy pulses rippled from their massive forms, sending shockwaves through the human fleet. Dozens of ships were already lost in the blink of an eye, torn apart by devastating weapons that left nothing behind but fragmented debris and the echo of death. Yet humanity did not falter. For every ship that was destroyed, two more rose from the survivors, fighting with everything they had left. They relied on speed, cunning, and their unmatched will to survive. The Endless were powerful, but the humans had learned to adapt. They fought with desperation, but they also fought with ingenuity, attacking where the enemy least expected, exploiting weaknesses they'd found through years of relentless warfare. "We've got their coordinates," shouted Lieutenant Josephine Patel from the communications deck. "I've triangulated the center of their command core. If we hit it with everything we've got, we might have a chance to disable their main structure. But we need a clear path now." Duval nodded grimly. "You heard her. Make it happen." With that, the remaining ships veered toward the heart of the enemy formation, slipping through the oncoming fire like ghosts in the dark. A wave of incoming enemy vessels surged in their path, their energy fields flickering and pulsating with malevolent power, but the humans pressed forward with relentless focus. In the distance, the central core of the Endless grew larger, its dark surface dotted with strange, organic structures that pulsed rhythmically, almost as if it were alive. The monolith itself seemed to shift in the void, reshaping in ways that defied all logic. For every wave of energy that struck, the core would reconfigure, its surface glistening with some unknown, alien substance that absorbed and redirected the incoming fire with terrifying ease. "Get those torpedoes locked on target," yelled Commander Samuel Ortiz, the chief engineer aboard the flagship. "We've got one shot at this." The human fleet had no illusions. They knew they wouldn't survive the full-on assault. This would be their final push. Their final stand. The last hope of a dying species. "All ships, prepare for a concentrated strike," Duval ordered, her voice resolute. For the next few moments, time seemed to slow. The human fleet aligned itself, every ship locked in perfect synchrony, weapons primed. It was a desperate maneuver, a last-ditch effort that relied entirely on precision. The humans didn't have the numbers or the firepower to take on the Endless head-to-head, but if they could land a hit at the heart of the enemy's base at the very core where their power was drawn, they might stand a chance. A single moment. That's all they had. "Target locked," Lieutenant Patel confirmed. Firing sequence initiated. The human ships launched their weapons, a torrent of energy blasts, missiles, and makeshift warheads, all converging on the heart of the enemy's structure. The void around them seemed to crack and scream in agony as the combined forces of humanity's last fleet collided with the impenetrable mass of the Endless. A brilliant explosion illuminated the darkness, the light flickering like the last defiant spark of a dying star. But the explosion didn't have the effect the humans had hoped for. Instead of crumbling, the structure of the Endless absorbed the attack, pulsating with a sickening intensity. A shock wave of raw energy lashed out, sending several ships spinning uncontrollably through the void, their communications lost, their lights blinking out one by one. The monolith shimmered, its surface rippling like liquid, and then nothing. A deep, oppressive silence. Humanity had failed. It was clear now. Duval's heart sank as she watched what remained of the fleet. Their last, desperate strike had not been enough. The Endless were too powerful, too ancient, too incomprehensible. But even as hope faltered, a voice cut through the quiet. "Captain!" Lieutenant Patel shouted. Something's happening with the core." The core, once dark and impenetrable, was glowing a faint, flickering light that pulsed in rhythm with the energy of the human ships. The blast hadn't destroyed the monolith. It had unlocked something hidden within it, something dormant. "Get us closer," Duval said, her mind racing. "We'll never survive another direct hit," Ortiz warned, his voice tense. "But if we can get close enough, there's a chance we could exploit the energy signature. It could overload the core and—" "Do it," Duval snapped. "No more hesitation. This is it." The fleet pushed forward, weaving through the chaos, making its way toward the heart of the Endless. The remaining ships locked onto the strange energy readings coming from the monolith. The core was exposed, vulnerable for the first time. The ship's weapons, desperate and fueled by the fear and fury of their crew, fired with everything they had, hitting the core at its weakest point. A massive explosion erupted from the center of the monolith, rippling out in all directions. For a moment, it seemed as if time itself had stopped. And then, a terrible sound echoed through the vast emptiness of space, an unholy scream that reverberated in the very soul of every human who heard it. The core of the Endless began to fracture, its immense structure breaking apart like a star going nova. A shock wave of destructive energy surged outward, engulfing everything in its path. But the humans didn't look away. They didn't retreat. They kept their eyes fixed on the heart of the alien horror, knowing that this was their only chance. As the shockwave tore through their fleet, ripping apart ship after ship, Captain Duval's ship remained. The flagship, battered and on the verge of collapse, held its course, driving forward until the very edge of destruction. And then nothing. The silence that followed was absolute. The vast structure of the Endless had been torn asunder. Where once there was an impenetrable black monolith, there was now nothing but the void, empty and silent. Humanity had won. Against all odds, against an ancient and terrifying enemy that had wiped out countless civilizations, they had struck the final blow. But at what cost? Captain Duval stood at the helm, staring out into the vast emptiness where the horrors of the Endless had once been. Their galaxy, what remained of it, was forever changed. The fight was over, but humanity had paid a heavy price. The last remnants of their fleet had been shattered, but in the end, they had succeeded. They had become the final testament to what it meant to survive. And in that moment, the galaxy knew that humanity would not be forgotten. The silence of space stretched on, a heavy stillness that seemed to weigh down on everything left behind. For a brief moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The remnants of humanity's fleet, broken and battered, hung in the cold void, suspended in a place between life and death. The victory over the Endless had come at a staggering cost, one measured in the lives of countless warriors who had fought and died for the chance at a future. But for all that had been lost, one undeniable truth remained: humanity was still here. The terror that had once seemed all-consuming, the extinction that had loomed like a shadow, was gone. And yet, as the ships drifted, battered and broken, the question lingered in the minds of the survivors: what came next? Captain Duval stood at the helm, gazing out into the wreckage, the remains of what had been the heart of the Endless flickering like a fading star. Her face was drawn, wearied by the endless campaign that had taken so much from her, but there was a glimmer of something else in her eyes now, something indefinable. The weight of their triumph was almost unbearable. "All ships report in," she said quietly, her voice breaking the stillness. "Status report. Anyone still standing?" One by one, the communication lines crackled to life, each voice a testament to the resilience of those who had survived. "This is the Endurance." "We're still here, Captain, but barely," came the voice of Commander Ortiz, his tone heavy. "Hull integrity's at 40%. We've lost most of our propulsion systems. If we don't get repairs in the next 24 hours, we won't be able to make it back to any colony." "This is the Phoenix. We've got a few casualties, but we're alive." Lieutenant Patel's voice was quieter, as though she was still processing the enormity of what had just happened. "The core is gone. But without it, what's left for us?" There was a long pause. The question, one that echoed in the heart of every human who had fought and survived, hung in the air like a ghost. What was left for humanity now that the enemy had been vanquished? What had they truly won? "We've still got each other," Duval said, more to herself than anyone else. "We still have our will to survive." But survival, after such a costly victory, was not enough. The war had shaped them into something fierce and unyielding, but now they were faced with an even greater challenge: rebuilding. "Captain," Ortiz continued, "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but there are no more colonies left to return to. The network we had is gone. All the others have fallen or been wiped out. There's nothing left but the void." Duval's heart sank. She had known it was coming, had sensed it in the quiet moments before, but hearing it aloud still stung. "Then we build again," she said. "We survive. That's what we do. It's who we are." A weak signal cut through the silence. A faint, warbled voice crackled across the comms, breaking the heaviness in the air like a flash of light. This is Liberty, Captain. We're still out here. We've got a few working engines left, but we can make it. We'll get to you. The fight's not over until we've rebuilt. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Walker, one of the few surviving crew members of the scattered human colonies, someone who had refused to abandon the hope that humanity could rise again. Duval smiled faintly, the smallest spark of hope flickering in her chest. For once, Walker, I think I believe you. We're coming back, Captain. Walker's voice was filled with quiet determination. We'll find a way. Duval turned away from the view of the wreckage, the broken ships, and the endless void that stretched beyond. She faced her crew. Despite the exhaustion in their eyes, despite the hollowed-out feeling of so many lost lives, there was something else there, too, a stubborn, defiant fire. Humanity had learned one crucial thing from its battle with the Endless, that there was no such thing as an impossible fight. They would rebuild. They had to. The war was over, yes. But the galaxy was still vast, still full of unknowns. The victory over the Endless was only the beginning of a much greater journey. It would take years, decades, perhaps to recover what had been lost, but humanity had proven one undeniable truth: they were not so easily extinguished. Duval squared her shoulders, staring at the fractured remains of the enemy's core, now just a faint, flickering memory in the endless void. This is just the start, people, she said. We have a galaxy to rebuild. And we will. Together. It would not be easy. There would be hard days ahead, days when the ghosts of the lost would haunt them, when they would wonder if it had all been worth it. But in the end, it wouldn't matter. They had faced the Endless, and they had survived. That was enough. And as the fleet began its slow, painful journey toward what was left of the distant colonies, one thought ran through Duval's mind, clear and unwavering. Humanity was never meant to fall. The journey toward rebuilding was anything but straightforward. What was left of humanity's fleet, scarred and reduced, drifted silently through the wreckage, carrying with it the remnants of a once proud civilization, now scattered across the stars. With no colonies to return to, no central government, no infrastructure, and no allies left to speak of, humanity was forced to confront its new reality. The fleet's destination wasn't a well-mapped star system or a friendly, untouched haven. It was simply a place. A place where they could breathe for a while, lick their wounds, and begin again. The survivors had no grand plans or visions of grandeur. There was only survival, and in that, there was still something worth fighting for. The first few weeks were dominated by silence and the hum of desperate repair work. The human ships were barely holding together. The Endurance, Phoenix, Liberty, and the others, each one of them was a patchwork of makeshift repairs, scavenged parts, and cobbled-together systems. But they kept moving forward. Duval paced the command deck of the Endurance, her mind a swirl of conflicting emotions. She was proud of the humans who had fought so hard, of the crew that had persevered through countless odds, but even now, the weight of the sacrifice hung over her like a thick fog. She had lost so many. She had seen so many die, friends, soldiers, leaders, yet here she was, still alive, still standing, with no clear path to follow. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Patel, breaking the silence. "We've got a signal. Faint, but it's definitely there. It's coming from a nearby system." Duval's heart skipped a beat. She turned, her expression hardening as the thought of hope stirred within her. "What's the origin?" "We don't know. It's not from any known human relay. Could be an old colony, or something we missed," Patel replied, her fingers working quickly across the console. "We're triangulating now." The crew exchanged glances, a shared tension gripping the room. A signal, any signal, was a lifeline, the possibility of finding something beyond the wreckage, beyond the endless darkness. They had to investigate, even if it meant risking everything. "Plot a course," Duval ordered. "We'll check it out." The Endurance hummed as it changed course, gliding through the blackness toward the faint signal. The journey was slow, the systems fragile, and every unexpected jolt was a reminder of just how tenuous their situation had become. But no one complained. The crew's exhaustion, the horror of what they had witnessed, all of it had been shoved into the back of their minds, replaced by an unspoken urgency. Something was out there, something they could hold on to. As they neared the source of the signal, the crew gathered around the main viewport. A small, cold star system lay before them, its lone planet nothing more than a frozen, desolate rock. But orbiting it was something unexpected. A station. Not just any station, but an ancient one. It was battered, covered in the scars of countless years, perhaps centuries of neglect. But it was still functional. It was still alive. "That's no human station," Ortiz muttered, peering out at the decaying structure. "It doesn't match any design we've ever seen." Duval stared out at it for a long moment, her brow furrowed. She had no idea who or what could have built such a place. The technology was unlike anything they had ever encountered, yet it didn't seem like the work of the Endless. It was old, abandoned, but there was still power running through it. There was still life within its cold walls. "Let's investigate," Duval decided, her voice hard with the need for answers. "Prepare a landing party. We need to know what's inside." The landing was rough. The station's outer hull was pockmarked and fractured, the result of years of neglect and the unforgiving forces of space. But as they made their way inside, the station seemed to hum with a strange, alien energy, its corridors stretching out like a labyrinth, abandoned yet not forgotten. Their boots echoed against the metallic floor, the sound amplified in the cavernous silence of the derelict station. Shadows clung to every corner, and yet, every step taken felt like an invitation to uncover something long hidden, something that might change everything. "What is this place?" Patel whispered, running her hand along the wall, feeling the strange energy pulsing beneath the surface. "It's like it's alive." Duval didn't respond immediately, her eyes scanning the hallways, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. "Keep your guard up," Duval said, her voice low. "Something doesn't feel right here." They moved deeper into the station, their footsteps careful but sure. The further they went, the stranger the station became. At first, it seemed like an ordinary abandoned facility, broken equipment, empty rooms, and hallways that stretched for miles, but as they ventured deeper, they discovered something far more unsettling. Strange symbols marked the walls. Symbols that no one on board had ever seen. They glowed faintly, like the remnants of a forgotten language, one that spoke of secrets buried in time. The deeper they went, the more they felt it. Something watching them. Something waiting. They reached the heart of the station. A massive chamber stretched before them, its center dominated by a colossal sphere, pulsing with a low, rhythmic hum. The air seemed thick, laden with energy that made the hairs on the back of Duval's neck stand on end. "This is it," Patel breathed, her voice full of awe. This is some kind of power source." The sphere at the center of the room flickered, its surface shifting as if it were alive, a strange energy emanating from it in waves. As they approached, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, and suddenly, the sphere sent out a pulse, a wave of energy that slammed into the group like a physical force. Duval gritted her teeth, bracing herself against the shock, but as the pulse subsided, she realized something. They had just activated something. They had awakened something. And it was responding. A voice, deep and resonant, filled the air. It wasn't spoken, but felt like a vibration in the very core of their beings. It echoed through the chamber, a low hum of ancient power, one that sent a chill through the survivors. "Who dares awaken the keepers of the lost?" The voice intoned, its words ancient and unknowable. "You who bear the blood of the fallen, what is it you seek?" Duval stood frozen, her heart pounding. She had no idea what was speaking to them, but she knew one thing: this was no ordinary station. This was something far older, something that had been waiting for a reason to awaken. And now, it was looking at them. "We seek survival," Duval said, her voice firm. "We seek knowledge. We seek a future for humanity." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, the voice spoke again, its tone shifting, darker, almost sad. Survival. Knowledge. Future. You seek what has been lost. But beware, humans. The price of the past is not without cost. The keepers know what you carry with you. Duval felt a surge of unease in her chest. The cost? What was the voice referring to? And what did it mean by the keepers? The sphere began to glow brighter, its surface shifting again. Something was happening. Something that would change everything for humanity. Prove your worth, the voice commanded, and the future you seek shall be revealed.